If you're brave enough to keep watching, then like, comment, and subscribe, because once you step inside ADX Florence, there's no turning back. They say ADX Florence isn't just a prison. It's a disappearance, a place where men enter with a name and leave as ghosts. On a cold January morning, under a sky the same shade as steel, a helicopter circled above the Supermax like a vulture. Inside it sat U.S. Marshal Daniel Rourke, a man whose eyes carried the weight of too many confessions, too many lost causes. He wasn't there for a transfer, or a visit, or routine security protocol. He was escorting the most controversial inmate ADX had processed in a decade, Michael Arden, former intelligence analyst, suspected of orchestrating a leak that cost 3 federal agents their lives. No conviction. No trial. Just one order: contain him. The cell that waited for Arden was a concrete box, 8 by 10 feet, built like a coffin standing upright. A single slit of a window cut through the wall, allowing only a ribbon of Colorado light. It wasn't enough to tell morning from night. Perfect for a man they wanted forgotten. But the story didn't begin here, it began 6 hours earlier. At 3:14 a.m., a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Denver shattered awake with sirens. Arden had been cornered in a modest brick house he'd been hiding in for months. Neighbors watched from behind blinds as armored vehicles flooded the street. No gunfire, no struggle. Arden simply stepped out with hands raised, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. There was something chilling in that surrender, the calm, the stillness, the faint smile he carried like a secret. Rourke noticed it instantly. On the helicopter, Arden broke the silence first. "Do you know what they're afraid of?" he asked, voice steady. Rourke didn't answer. He didn't have to. Arden leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what I did. It's what I know." Those 5 words followed Rourke long after they landed inside Florence's reinforced perimeter. Guards processed Arden with the precision of surgeons. Shackles removed. Uniform issued. Eyes scanned. Everything recorded, except the one thing someone desperately wanted erased, the truth Arden hinted at but never revealed. By 10:45 a.m., Arden was locked inside his cell. No contact. No voice. Just concrete, steel, and silence thick enough to suffocate thought. But Rourke felt unfinished business beneath the surface, like a current running under ice. Why had a man with so much leverage surrendered so willingly? Why did Washington push for immediate isolation? And why, upon Arden's arrival, was the warden already waiting at the gate, hands clasped tight, expression strained? Something wasn't right. At 11:06 a.m., an alarm suddenly blared, not for an escape, not for a riot, but for something even more unsettling. A missing file. Arden's entire case dossier, sealed under federal order, had vanished from the ADX secure archive. And when investigators checked the surveillance room to find out who accessed it, the footage showed someone impossible. Arden inside the archive, hours before he ever arrived. The footage shouldn't have existed, and yet it played on loop like a taunt. Arden, wearing an ADX uniform, walking calmly into the federal archive, head slightly bowed, hands behind his back as if escorted by invisible guards. Time-stamped 4:32 a.m. hours before he was physically arrested in Denver. There was no break-in, no forced entry. He appeared, frame by frame, like someone who already lived inside the system. Marshal Rourke stared at the monitor, jaw tight. Arden, still confined in his cell, hadn't moved since placement. But the evidence said otherwise. The contradiction gnawed at everyone in the room. Warden Hale ordered silence, this leak couldn't reach beyond concrete walls. ADX prided itself on being impenetrable. A ghost in the tapes threatened everything. Inside his cell, Arden sat on the bunk, hands folded, calm as ritual. Rourke entered for questioning, 2 guards at his back. The door groaned shut, sealing them in with stale air and quiet tension. "You were seen accessing restricted files," Rourke said. "How?" Arden's eyes shifted to him, slow, deliberate. "No prison holds information forever. People do." The corner of his mouth lifted, not a smile, but an admission without words. "Are you saying you had help?" Rourke pressed. Arden leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice low. "Everyone here has something to lose. Especially your warden." The accusation hit like a drop of blood in water. Rourke left the interview unsettled. Hale wasn't known for weakness, strict, relentless, 30 years in federal security. But Arden had spoken with certainty, not speculation. As if he'd studied them long before he ever stepped inside their walls. That afternoon, Rourke dug deeper. He examined Arden's arrest location, financial records, communication logs, nothing unusual, until he reached intelligence clearance reports. Arden's classified access had been terminated months prior, yet hidden within archived layers was a transfer log, confidential material relocated to ADX Florence signed by Hale himself. How? Arden shouldn't have had prior connection to the prison. None of it aligned. At 6:40 p.m., another blow landed. A guard named Torres vanished during his shift. His radio was found inside a locked hallway, still warm to the touch. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. As if he stepped through the walls. Panic rippled through the command chain. ADX never lost a guard. Not once. Until now. Rourke requested full facility lockdown. The lights dimmed, metal doors thundered shut, and Florence sank into a silence even heavier than usual. But something about Arden's cell bothered him. Security logs flagged his biometric door 2 minutes before Torres disappeared. Not an open. Not an override. A presence detection. As if someone else was standing right outside. Rourke returned to the cell, heartbeat loud in his ears. Arden remained seated, still, untouched by chaos. What happened to Torres? Rourke demanded. Arden met his stare, unblinking. You're looking for the wrong prisoner. Rourke felt the chill before he heard the words. Arden slowly extended his hand, revealing Torres' ID badge. I told you, Arden whispered. They didn't bring me here to keep me inside. They brought me here to keep someone else from getting out. The ID badge in Arden's hand was warm not from body heat, but from recent use. Rourke's pulse climbed as the truth twisted into shape. Maybe Arden wasn't the danger. Maybe he was the bait. The prison intercom cracked with static like bone under pressure. All units, report. We have a breach in Block D. The voice trembled, something Rourke had never heard inside Florence. Supermaxes don't tremble. Not unless fear is justified. Rourke stared hard at Arden. Who's the real inmate? Arden inhaled slowly, as if choosing words that could shatter concrete. You think ADX only holds men you've heard of, terrorists, cartel heads, killers. But sometimes the most dangerous prisoner is the one no one knows exists. The alarms deepened, a red pulse sweeping corridors like a heartbeat gone wild. Doors rattled. Radios spat fragments of panic. A guard screaming. Then silence, thick, total, unnatural. Rourke clicked his radio. Control, respond. Nothing. He had no choice. He opened the cell. Arden didn't run. He stepped out with eerie calm, like a man returning to a place he had mapped years ago. Together they moved through the dim corridors, past empty stations and abandoned equipment. The farther they walked, the colder the air felt, as if the prison itself was holding its breath. In the surveillance hub, Rourke pulled footage from Block D. His hands froze. Torres, the missing guard, was alive, but wrong. He moved with jerky precision, eyes unfocused, like someone carrying orders wired directly into his mind. Shadows trailed him, subtle at first, then unmistakable, another figure behind him, using the guard as a shield. A man with an inmate uniform. No number. No record. No name. He was here long before I arrived, Arden murmured. I accessed the files to expose him. They wiped the evidence instead. Rourke watched the nameless inmate lift his gaze toward the camera, as if he could see through the screen. Calm. Patient. A predator waiting behind steel. Rourke swallowed hard. Why bring you here? Arden turned to him, voice steady despite the chaos. They needed someone who could think like him. Someone who understood systems, pressure points, psychology. But they didn't plan for me to survive it. The unnamed inmate moved again, cutting power to half the prison. Emergency lights flickered, painting walls blood red. Rourke knew this was the moment that would define everything: escape, massacre, or truth. They hunted him through the bowels of ADX, footsteps echoing in cold concrete. Finally, in a corridor lined with meal ports and bolted doors, they found him standing still, hands at his sides, as if waiting. No violence. No struggle. He simply smiled. "Michael, you made it." Recognition flashed between them, two minds, once connected by intelligence programs too classified to name. Not friends. Not allies. Just two sides of the same agenda. Arden stepped forward slowly. "This ends now." Rourke never learned what passed between them, a whisper, a confession, a surrender. But when the unnamed inmate raised his hands, he spoke only 4 words. "I'm done running too." The capture took minutes. The questions that followed will take years. As Arden was escorted back to his concrete box, Rourke watched him disappear behind the steel door. Not defeated, just contained. A man who saved a nation in silence and would never receive credit. That night, the prison returned to normal. But nothing inside Rourke felt normal. Some criminals you catch. Others, you just bury deeper. And somewhere in ADX Florence, behind a door with no label, a prisoner sits in the dark, a ghost with no past, a threat with no file. Because in Florence, the most dangerous prisoners aren't the ones the world knows. They're the ones the world never hears about. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.